welcome into day 2 of SEC Media Days. I'm Jacob Morris. We've got a jam-packed show for you today. We hear from all 4 teams that took the podium: Georgia, Tennessee, the newcomers on the block, Oklahoma, as well as Missouri. But the first person we heard from was coordinator of officials, John McDade. He talked about a whole host of things, including replay, the addition of iPads, the 2-minute warning. But what caught the ear or eye of most people was the topic of horns down. Texas coming into the conference, and the old Big 12 days, the gesture, the hook 'em, putting them upside down, that gets you an automatic unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. But according to McDade, the SEC is taking a much looser approach in monitoring the gesture.
We have a team that has a gator chomp. We have a team that uses the shark fin for stellar defensive play. And we've had over the years opponents of those teams using those signals to be derogatory in their stance, correct? There are less than the fingers on one of your hands that I can remember creating an unsportsmanlike conduct foul for using an opponent's signal in a derogatory manner. It's not that it only happened less than 5 times over that period of time. It's just that contextually it didn't create taunting, or it didn't create a travesty of the game.
It's a new day and a new conference for the Longhorns. That should be interesting and a whole lot of fun to monitor moving forward. But the first team we heard from was perhaps the premier program in all of college football. Kirby Smart took the podium, as well as a couple players from the Georgia Bulldogs. Kirby talked about getting his program back to where it needs to be, falling short of the Georgia standard a year ago, not making the college football playoff, as well as navigating the new world of college football, including the transfer portal. And that portal is where Arkansas found one of its newest linebackers in Xavier Sori, a former 5-star commit who is now on the Hill and figures to play a big-time role in the defense. Good news for Arkansas fans. He made a big-time impact on his former teammates, who say he played a large part in that Georgia defense.
Sori, he's special for sure. So Sori's one of my good guys, and just to watch him as a player, he's a great athlete, and the things that he can do, there's no limit on it. And Sori as a person, he's awesome. He's the type of person you want to be around the locker room, and the type of person you want to follow when you first get here.
Sori's a dog. He's a sideline guy. He's a great person though, a great human really. He's a funny guy. He's a great guy to have in the locker room. Sori's a dog.
It's not surprising we're hearing rave reviews from Sori's former teammates. All we've heard is good things out of Fayetteville when it comes to the new linebacker. Once the Bulldogs wrapped up, we caught up with Josh Heupel and the Tennessee Volunteers. It's a program entering a pivotal year as well. A new quarterback takes the reins for Heupel. It's Nico Maliava, the former 5-star with a whole lot of potential and a whole lot of expectations. And similar to Georgia, Arkansas taking a couple former Volunteers to the transfer portal as well. Offensive lineman Addison Nichols and DB Danico Slaughter joining the squad. And just like Sori, the Volunteers had great things to say about the Hogs' new transfer portal additions this offseason.
Both of those guys are just great guys. They both are my guys. Like, I still talk to both of them. Nico, that's really my guy. He was in my class coming in. Addison, going against him, just learning him as a person is all good. He was literally right across from me in the locker. So those both my guys. I look forward to seeing them when we play them and just having a good time.
Oh, man, I'd say the biggest thing is he's a guy that works really hard and fits in. I think he's a guy that has a lot of physical tools. I mean, he's a huge guy, really strong, strong in the weight room, strong on the field. He's still young, trying to put it all together like we all are, and I think he'll have a good spot over there at Arkansas for sure.
It should be interesting to see what Danico Slaughter and Addison Nichols do in Razorback uniforms, but it's time to learn a little bit more about the Tennessee Volunteers. We welcome in Sam Rothman, a weekend anchor at WATE up in Knoxville. Sam, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, so it's an interesting year for the Volunteers. New quarterback comes in, highly touted, Nico Maliava. It's a tough name to pronounce. Might just go with Nico, but he's he's highly touted for a reason. Everybody's really excited about him in Knoxville.
And we were very excited. We already got kind of a sneak peek of him last year in the Citrus Bowl. He was the starting quarterback for that. He made history with that big win over Iowa. And now that he has he'll have a full fall training camp under his belt as a starter. So a lot of hype around him, and for good reason. Coach Heupel has talked about how he's even-keeled. Very hard for a young quarterback to be so even-keeled. Now we'll see how that portrays in SEC environments and on the road, but right now he's pretty much, as advertised.
Yeah, high expectations because of that high recruiting ranking. Coming in as a 5-star guy, waited his turn a little bit, but lit up that Iowa defense like you mentioned. And let's talk about Josh Heupel, offensive mastermind. We saw what he did with Hendon Hooker. You give him Nico, it should be pretty special. Interesting to see what Heupel does in year 3 here, and there's a little bit of, we'll say, added drama. People trying to wonder what's going to be when Heupel returns to normal, and that's the SEC opener, Oklahoma and Tennessee.
Yeah, if you talk to Heupel, I'm sure he wishes that wasn't the SEC opener because that's what everyone wants to ask him about. And he is so one game at a time, no drama, even keel, just kind of like Nico, like his quarterback. So everyone is putting an extra, hype around that game. He is not. I'm sure it's going to be special for him. You see him walk around with the Oklahoma media and Oklahoma people that he knows. I mean, he won a national championship there. It has meaning for him, but he didn't leave on the best of terms. So it will be an interesting environment for him to be in, see what kind of welcome he gets. But he's saying it's just like every other game. I think everyone else is saying it's not. Just like every other game.
He got asked about 25 questions about it during the media sessions. He joked at one point, he said, I thought I was only going to get one Oklahoma question, the over hits. What are you expecting to see from this Tennessee team? High expectations, obviously, because of this offense, but it's a complete team on offense and defense. What do you expect to see from the Vols this year?
One area that is not talked about with a Heupel-led team is the defense. We talked to Amari Thomas today. He expects defense each year has taken a big step. So it'll be interesting to see if they take another step this year. They have Keenan Peely back, which is huge. He wasn't able to play last year, got hurt in that first game at BYU transfer. And it's a team full of vets. They call Keenan Peely the grandpa. You could say that Amari Thomas is a grandpa. Then you look at the offensive line. They have 3 fifth-year guys with a young quarterback. So that's going to be huge for him. I think that there is a good mix of young and old. I think that they should live up to expectations, especially with the expanded playoff. They won't say it, but I'm sure they're excited about it because you mentioned Hendon Hooker. They would have made that playoff with the Hendon Hooker team. Things didn't go as expected last year with Joe Milton. He kind of struggled under a Heupel offense, didn't move the ball fast enough, didn't get out of the pocket fast enough. Nico has shown that he can, and now just with all of the prep that has gone into it, I think that they should live up to the hype.
We'll see. The Vols pay a visit to Fayetteville in October. We were talking a little bit before we got on here. Are you going to make a visit to Fayetteville, and if so, you excited?
I will be making the trip. A lot of long road trips for Tennessee, Oklahoma, and then Arkansas. I think it's either the next week or the week after, so we'll be in the car for a lot. But yes, we'll be making the trip. Very excited. I've not experienced a game there, so very excited. I know Omari Thomas got asked a question about his freshman year.
Yes.
He played at Arkansas, so I'm sure he's excited. So it'll be a good one.
Yeah, it should be interesting. When they came in 2020, obviously not a lot of fans, so it should be fun for them to get back to Fayetteville, and hopefully you have a good experience as well.
Yeah,
Sam,
hopefully you make it a good experience for me.
We'll see. Sam, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
From the Volunteers to the Sooners, Oklahoma, the new kids on the block in the SEC taking the podium. It's a pivotal season for Brent Venables. He's breaking in a new quarterback as well in Jackson Arnold. And when Oklahoma comes to the SEC, they bring one of the best rivalries in all of college football in the Red River Shootout between Oklahoma and Texas. To no surprise, after comments this morning about officiating the horns down gesture, Oklahoma players quick to say they don't mind the new leniency from the conference on the gesture.
I mean, it shouldn't be a penalty anyways. Everybody has a hand signal. If you let a hand signal affect you and affect the game, maybe you shouldn't be there. So, allowing us to throw the horns down, that's cool and all. But, if it can't be a part of the game, then, it's pretty soft.
Those are fighting words from Oklahoma safety Billy Bowman on the Red River rivalry. And speaking of rivalries, Hog fans' favorite subject, the Battle Line rivalry, came up when Missouri took the podium. To finish up day 2 of SEC Media Days, Missouri defensive lineman Christian Williams making a couple choice words about the rivalry between the two teams when he took the stand.
What do I think the future between us and Arkansas? Whatever it is, it's a rival for a reason, so who knows? You never know. But it's a competitive sport at the end of the day. Emotions flare up. Guys compete with one another at the highest level, so you want to bring that out of somebody. Like, you want to bring the best out of them, so who knows?
Putting a bow on day 2 of SEC Media Days, back again with ESPN Arkansas's Ty Richardson. Ty, day 2 in the books here. What are your big takeaways from the second day?
You know what? I thought Eli Drinkowitz, Arkansas roots, was very strong on Mike Leach.
Yeah.
I thought he was kind of playing with CBS sports writer Dennis Dodd on the hot seat, which he's no longer there in Columbia. That was kind of the big take. And Brent Venables, again, I was curious. First SEC media days. Sark hasn't been here, but he's been in the league. I thought there was an occasional question or two. He didn't know how to handle it. And I'm curious if that's just like me playing too much or like making too much out of that, or if that's something that really equates to the big picture of OU handling the SEC.
Yeah, we'll see if it actually, matters in terms of the program or the team handling the SEC, but I don't think you were overthinking that because he was asked a couple of questions and he even said, I'm not sure how to answer that, and I thought that was interesting. Regardless, it still felt odd getting used to seeing that branding involved with the SEC. You mentioned it, Brent Venables, Jackson Arnold, and a couple other players take the podium, and it's just weird seeing Oklahoma in the SEC.
Yeah, and Oklahoma, again, their first road SEC opener in Auburn. You're going to find a lot about that football team. The week before, they hosted the Tennessee Volunteers, which is going to be a battle of two young quarterbacks, and Nico Villanueva and then also Jackson Arnold. So I'm curious to see kind of who comes out of that game. And again, sometimes Oklahoma would have the benefit, they play a marquee game like Texas, and they'd follow it up with a lackluster Big 12 opponent. They don't have that luxury anymore, and just the terrain of this league is unlike anything that anyone's ever coached outside of the SEC.
Yeah, and Brent Venables, I think, although he might not have knocked every question out of the park, he was very careful, as were the players, to talk about. They said that time and time again. Every time they were asked a question about, are you thinking about this potential game? They said, we're thinking about every single game on the schedule. But you mentioned that Tennessee-Oklahoma game. That was another big theme of today because Josh Heupel gets up there and he pretty much got asked more questions about going back to Norman, Oklahoma than he did his own team. Obviously won a national championship with the Sooners, and he got asked plenty about going back to Oklahoma.
Yeah, and that's going to be a really interesting dynamic because I wonder if, like, let's say the Venables experiment fails, Heupel keeps having success in Knoxville, how much that Joe Castiglione, their athletics director, will try and go after Josh Heupel. Of course, at our own, didn't seem like he was a huge priority first time, then he started winning. So that is something to monitor, not just with that game, but in years to come if the Venables thing does not work out.
Should be interesting to watch. Again, that's going to be a great SEC opener between Tennessee and Oklahoma. But Georgia was who we heard from first, the premier program in college football, you would say right now. And Kirby was interesting. He got up there and he was firm in a lot of things. And he was asked again about kind of the driving incidents that have been going on in Athens. And more continues to come out about that.
Yeah, so, I mean, your star quarterback was flashing, a Maserati the other day, and Carson Beck. He hasn't been cited or had an incident or anything, but it's a stigma. It's not just an unfair stigma. I mean, there's multiple incidents. There was a casualty, unfortunately. So Kirby, as a head football coach and really the face of the league right now, I'd say, and I don't think it's close, has to just tell his guys, like, hey, I realize that you have the money or the sponsorships to get nice cars, but you can't do this. I mean, you and I were both that age once. We were morons behind the wheel, especially, I mean, I had a beat-up truck. If I was given a vehicle that would go 120 in 6 seconds, I'd probably do even the same thing. But that has to stop in Athens in order for that program to continue to have sustained success.
Last thing before we go here, Eli Drinkwitz, a couple of the Missouri Tigers, asked about the Battle Line rivalry, talked about it continuing to be a rivalry within the SEC. What'd you take from all of that?
Listen, Eli, as a head coach, has done more for that rivalry, just occasionally pushing and prodding a little bit. If he keeps winning, it's not going to be a rivalry because rivalries are contingent upon two teams going back and forth, not just occasional verbal assaults, but actual back and forth competition. Arkansas hasn't done their part in this rivalry since Missouri joined the league, Jacob.
Missouri's taking care of business big time since joining. Should be interesting to watch that moving forward. That's Ty Richardson. I'm Jacob Morris. We'll talk to you tomorrow.